Eleanor Ward had always preferred sitting at the back of the lecture theatre, where the world could unfold quietly in front of her. She was the sort of girl who lived in the margins, both in books and in life. Her notebooks were filled not only with lecture notes but with doodles, overheard phrases, and the kinds of thoughts you never say out loud. She studied literature at Wexley University, a campus woven in ivy and soft autumn breezes, where the air always smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Her world was quiet, measured, and neatly underlined, until James Carter walked in like a chapter that refused to follow the plot. He was the type of student everyone noticed. Tall, charismatic, with unruly brown hair and eyes that could make someone forget what day it was. James studied architecture and walked through campus like he owned the pavement beneath his feet. He was the opposite of everything Eleanor was, confident where she hesitated, loud where she whispered. She had seen him around before, always surrounded by people, always laughing. She never expected their paths to cross in any meaningful way. But life, with all its irony, placed them in the same group for a project that neither of them particularly wanted to do. The assignment was simple enough. A cross-disciplinary project pairing literature and design students to create a visual interpretation of a chosen poem. Eleanor, naturally, wanted something classic, perhaps Wordsworth or Keats. James, on the other hand, proposed something contemporary, something experimental. Their first meeting was awkward. She arrived early, sat near the corner of the campus cafe with her notes already prepared. He arrived 15 minutes late, no books, just a half-empty bottle of iced coffee and a grin that said he had no idea what they were doing. "You are Eleanor, right?" he asked, pulling out a chair and sinking into it like he had known her forever. She nodded, not entirely sure if she should be annoyed or intrigued. "And you are James, obviously," she replied. He laughed, not unkindly, and gestured toward her notebook. "You look like you have already finished the whole thing." She offered a small smile. "Maybe I have." Despite their differences, something began to shift. They started meeting more often than the group required. At first, it was for the sake of the project, but soon they were lingering after meetings, walking through the stone paths of campus under rustling trees, talking about music and old films and how neither of them really liked the dining hall food. Eleanor found herself looking forward to his presence, the way he made everything feel light, like nothing was ever as serious as it seemed. James, to her surprise, started carrying a notebook around. Not to sketch, but to write things down. Phrases she said, lines from poems, his thoughts between classes. As the weeks passed, so did the leaves. The trees surrounding Wexley began to turn gold and copper, and there was a certain warmth in the air that did not come from the sun. Eleanor was changing. She laughed more. She wore her hair loose instead of tucked behind her ears. She began arriving late to lectures, walking in with James, who always had something clever to whisper as they found their seats. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as the quiet girl in the back, but as someone worth knowing. One evening, while they worked together in the library, James leaned across the table, his voice lower than usual. "Do you think people like us ever end up together in real life? Not just in books?" Eleanor blinked, unsure what he meant. "People like us?" he repeated, softer. "Like the ones who are completely different." She felt her pulse quicken. "Maybe that is exactly why we do," she replied. Their first kiss was not dramatic. It happened just outside the library, in the soft orange glow of a broken lamppost, after they had argued playfully about which poet was more overrated. James stopped walking, looked at her for a moment longer than necessary, and then leaned in. It was gentle, familiar, like turning a page you had read 1,000 times but only now truly understood. For a while, everything was golden. They spent weekends exploring old bookshops and Sunday mornings sprawled across the grass behind the art building. He started sketching her when she was reading. She pretended not to notice, but she always blushed. They shared secrets in whispers. He told her about his fear of failure. She told him about the night her mother left and never returned. It was the kind of love that felt like a quiet revolution. But love in college is a fragile thing. It lives in between lectures and part-time jobs and the looming fear of what comes next. It needs attention, honesty, and timing. And sometimes, even when the feelings are right, everything else goes wrong. Eleanor began noticing something. James grew distant. Not all at once, but gradually. He cancelled plans. His responses became short. He no longer waited for her after class. She told herself it was stress, deadlines, burnout. But the doubt crept in like cold air through a cracked window. One evening, after waiting for him for nearly an hour outside the art building, she walked inside and found him alone in a studio, talking to a girl from his course. They were standing close. Too close, laughing at something she could not hear. He noticed her before she could walk away. Eleanor, hey. I thought we were meeting later. She tried to smile, but it felt like paper tearing. Sorry. I must have misunderstood. For a while, everything was golden. They spent weekends exploring old bookshops and Sunday mornings sprawled across the grass behind the art building. He started sketching her when she was reading. She pretended not to notice, but she always blushed. They shared secrets in whispers. He told her about his fear of failure. She told him about the night her mother left and never returned. It was the kind of love that felt like a quiet revolution. But love in college is a fragile thing. It lives in between lectures and part-time jobs and the looming fear of what comes next. It needs attention, honesty, and timing. And sometimes, even when the feelings are right, everything else goes wrong. Eleanor began noticing something. James grew distant. Not all at once, but gradually. He cancelled plans. His responses became short. He no longer waited for her after class. She told herself it was stress, deadlines, burnout. But the doubt crept in like cold air through a cracked window. One evening, after waiting for him for nearly an hour outside the art building, she walked inside and found him alone in a studio, talking to a girl from his course. They were standing close. Too close, laughing at something she could not hear. He noticed her before she could walk away. Eleanor, hey. I thought we were meeting later. She tried to smile, but it felt like paper tearing. Sorry. I must have misunderstood. She left before he could explain. That night, she didn't cry. She wrote. 4 hours. Her journal became a battlefield of what-ifs and unfinished thoughts. She knew she had fallen for him. But she also knew that love, when not returned with the same weight, becomes a quiet ache that never leaves. The next day, he found her sitting under the big oak tree where they used to eat lunch. I messed up, he said, dropping beside her. I did not do anything wrong with her, if that is what you are thinking. But I pulled away. And that is on me. Eleanor stared at the leaves above them, rustling in the wind. Why? She asked. Why push me away? James hesitated. Because I started to think it was too good. That I would ruin it. That you would leave when you realized I wasn't who you thought I was. She turned to him slowly. You idiot, she said softly. I never wanted perfect. I just wanted honest. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. I can be that, he said. If you still want me to try. There was a long pause. The kind that holds entire decisions inside it. Finally, Eleanor nodded. Then start now. The weeks that followed were not flawless. There were hard conversations, awkward silences, and moments where doubt threatened to return. But they also found new rhythm. Real rhythm. Not made of butterflies and poetry, but of shared effort, forgiveness, and a commitment to choosing each other even when it felt inconvenient. By the time autumn gave way to winter, the trees stood bare, but Eleanor felt full. She was still herself, quiet, observant, and reflective, but now she smiled more easily. Not because someone else gave her a reason, but because she had allowed herself to bloom. One evening, just before the holidays, James handed her a sketchbook. It was filled with drawings of her, reading, writing, laughing, daydreaming. At the back was a quote in his messy handwriting. Before you, I only ever built buildings. Now I build poems. She looked at him, eyes soft, and said, I used to write about characters who waited for someone to notice them. Now, I write about the girl who decided she was worth being seen. And there, in the quiet heart of Wexley University, beneath a sky heavy with stars and memory, two students learned that love is not found in perfect moments, but in imperfect hearts that choose to stay when they could have walked away. If you love this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More heartfelt stories await you every week, only here on our channel.